Hello, and welcome to Night Clerk Radio. This is episode 115, Vacation Bible School and the Satanic Panic. In this episode, we're going to be looking over a series of albums produced over the last couple of years by our favorite Christian wave, which is kind of a one-person subgenre of vaporwave now.
Well, there's like Hennessy and stuff too. But
okay, yeah, definitely Vacation Bible School is the pioneer, the trailblazer.
Yeah. Church
wave, Christian wave. Vaporwave that is themed on, mixed feelings about Christian media in general.
Yeah.
Of which is there an entire industry of that. Unless you're part of that culture, it's very easy to be totally ignorant of. Like, it's so siloed from the rest of society that, like, you have to be kind of tuned in to know that it even exists. But people who know it exists, boy, they have to deal with a lot of it, it seems like. So these albums, there's 5 of them, are about the Halloween or fall festival, as evangelicals call it, and the Satanic Panic. For our listeners who are not familiar with the Satanic Panic, this is a moral panic that really got kick-started in the 1980s with these tearful, false, or coerced or sort of confessions or accounts by children like, oh, my daycare, it started as, like my daycare nanny was a Satanist and sacrificed a cat in front of me and did all these horrible things. And this spread as right-wing Christians were terrified of losing power in popular culture. And so they imagined all these things were the influence of Satan. And most notably, Satanic Panic is remembered for its impact on Dungeons and Dragons, as that was basically Satan's game, in other words. They thought role-playing games were a new tool for Satanist cults, which they imagined to be everywhere, and were corrupting teenagers and the youths in general. But also, like, rock and roll was a tool to Satan. And in the 90s, Pokemon and Harry Potter. The highlight of the Satanic Panic was in the 80s, but it's kind of not totally ever stopped. Like, evangelicals believe Satanists are everywhere. But anyways, the media was everywhere. There were VHS tapes for cops to learn how to spot Satanist cults, operating in public parks and that kind of thing. And it just became a staple of 1980s that to imagine Satanists were doing horrible things just behind closed doors. And these albums explore our mixed feelings about, well, some Christians mixed feelings about Halloween, a whole holiday for ghouls and ghosts and spooky things, which is very, I don't know if you know this, Burke, but kind of satanic.
I'd heard.
Yeah. And these are very interesting albums and not kind of what I was expecting going into it. A lot more complex and very interesting stuff. But Berg, do you have a favorite piece of Satanic Panic Christian media? Because we've looked at so many in the past, just hanging out.
It's true.
Yeah.
I have a lot to say about Satanic Panic in general. I think it's interesting that it is such a media force. So I'm one of those people who did not grow up with any sort of American Bible Belt childhood. I'd not even heard of like chick tracts until you and Caleb taught me about that.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Apparently that's like a seminal aspect of Bible Belt childhood is getting your chick tracts, which are little Christian comic books that are like the size of a postcard, right? And like, it's like 10 lines of like, be good Christian boy.
They're kind of bookmark shaped. And I did not grow up in a Christian household. Like, my mom was a lapsed Catholic when I was growing up. And my dad left the Baptist church, when he was a young adult. But it's just like radiation. It's just all around you. You just have contact exposure. Like, I would go to the library and flip through books and find a chick tract tucked in there.
Okay.
That's their how they spread them is they would just get a bunch of them and put them in public places. I found one a couple of years ago walking around downtown. I was like, oh my God, they're still doing this. And you can go to chick.com and they have them all up as little online versions that you can read online. And they did one on D&D, which became a whole meme because, their character gets killed and then they kill themselves. Blackleaf tie, no! And then she hangs herself. Like, it's very silly. And then, of course, I had friends who were Christians and like one or two tried to witness to me as a kid. And like, it's just impossible to escape it entirely in the Midwest. Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's the point is that even if you don't believe or raised in that household, it's everywhere. So Satanic Panic is also like so multifaceted that it wasn't until more recently, or maybe the past 15 years, that I became more aware of like other media aspects of it.
Mm-hmm.
Because in the 90s, we didn't really have the Satanic Panic around Halloween in my household or movies or whatever. And there really was no Satanic Panic in my household. But what I was familiar with was like heavy metal, like all these Satanist rock bands, and Ozzy Osbourne has devil references, and Black Sabbath and stuff like that. And like probably the most popular silly example of Satanic Panic is Dungeons and Dragons, which I was aware of playing tabletop role-playing games in high school. Mm-hmm. So it wasn't until more recently that, there's this whole network of just VHS being pumped out. And some of it is an amazing watch. So there's a couple of YouTube channels. I think Occult Demon Video Cassette. I'll put the exact link in the show notes because I don't want to get the shout out wrong, but that's not quite the name of the channel. It's something like that. They will post basically all of these, and they are like just rambling about Satan coming to get you. It's, your example of a teacher is a good one because it mimics a lot of language still used now, right? Mm-hmm. Of like these nebulous anecdotes that get turned into like facts in some people's heads. You see that now about like, oh, they're doing transgender stuff, or oh, they're bringing in dog food bowls for the furry teens, like those types of rumors and nonsense. So it's interesting from a standpoint that like the language, the rhetoric has never evolved. So like immediately that's fascinating. But going all the way back to your question of favorite pieces, it's going to be some of those VHSs on there. You mentioned the cop one, which is like Police Officer's Guide to Satanic Cults.
Yeah, Law Enforcement Guide to Satanic Cults, yeah. Yeah,
exactly. That's a famous one. It's got some great things, but like, a lot of the satanic symbolism is wrong. Like it's like oriented the wrong way, or it's like the wrong symbol and stuff. The World Wide Web of Satan's Web about the internet from the early 90s is like a really good one. Both of those feature one of my favorite tropes. Again, language that still goes on today, which is the guy who was like, I used to be a Satanist pornographer, but now I'm a Christian minister and I'm here to teach you, which is very popular now, where people are like, I was a Democrat until they made me care about minorities, and now I'm a QAnon grifter on Twitter. So like that flip-flop narrative, they love people coming back to their team. Mm-hmm. So that's like a repeated rhetoric. But the World Wide Web one is very funny because it is like one guy who was like, I was a Satanist and a pornographer, and I'm going to show you how to look up satanic porn so your kids don't do it. it's like so fucking weird. Like, it's just the old man's just like, is he saying I could look up just anything at any time?
Yeah. I need to keep a close eye on this. Yeah. I think my single favorite piece is actually not from a primary thing, but Surviving Edged Weapons, which is about, cop training video about defending yourself against knives, has a reenactment where a Satanist attacks a cop. And I just love that it casually threw in a whole cops bursting in a satanic human sacrifice ritual.
Yeah. They're like raiding an apartment, and it's like, we just happened to get here while they're sacrificing a baby or whatever. It's very silly.
Yeah. Extremely good shit.
My other favorite one, because there's so many, there's so much media around it. It actually was recently posted on one of these channels where it was just a local news station doing a report on Satanic Panic. And it was one of these like, I don't know, Bloomington, Indiana or whatever talk shows.
Yeah.
Clearly super, super local. And they have a guy on there who's like their satanic expert, and he's giving all these symbols, and there's an audience, but it's like a call-in show. And a guy calls in and was like, I noticed one of the satanic symbols you had was like an ankh, but that doesn't really make sense because it just represents like new life in Egyptian culture and all this stuff. He's like, well, I've seen Satanists use it. They don't care what it means. I've seen them use it. And he was like, oh, well, where? He's like, it doesn't matter. Next caller. It's like,
yeah, I think my other single favorite one is there's a minister or pastor who's like explaining how He-Man is satanic. And he has the Gray Skull Mountain with the little microphone, and he starts like playing with the toys to explain how they're satanic. God, it's just, if you look at everything through a lens of, Satanists are everywhere, then everything's satanic. Like it's, I mean, these moral panics are pretty well. Sociologists, this is like the kind of bread and butter of a sociologist, like academic career, right? There's a lot of you mentioned the trans panic now, but like, it's like a well-standing thing. And like the sad thing is the people who start these moral panics are almost never like ridiculed or outcast. They just everyone forgets that they started it, and they just kind of move on with their lives. but the damage is done, like generation. I knew a kid when I was in high school whose parents burned his D&D books because they thought he was, being influenced by the devil. And like other people I knew, would not be able to play because their parents wouldn't let them, or they had to play on the sly, let other people hold their books for them. It was like drugs, which probably did a lot more to establish D&D's credibility and popularity than anything else. Like in a lot of ways.
It's actually satanic and I'm a wizard fighting demons.
Yeah.
That'd be pretty legit.
Yeah, exactly. It's way cooler than, I'm trying to level up my guy and we're reenacting Lord of the Rings, but with a lot more, looting corpses. So, but to get to the main topic, Vacation Bible School.
I'm going to derail you one more time.
All right.
Sorry.
Yeah, no problem.
Last piece of media, just because I'd be remiss if I didn't mention it. Because I thought of it as soon as you mentioned product descriptions. The lady explaining why Monster Energy drink is satanic.
Oh,
classic vid.
Yeah.
Like each one of these lines is Hebrew for 6. So when it's 666 on the can. So bottoms up and the devil laughs. It's like, it's so fucking stupid. Yeah.
No, it really is. Cause it shows that. And that was like not too long ago. I mean, maybe like 10 years ago or something like that. But
Monster is fairly new. Yeah.
Yeah. People associate the Satanic Panic with the 1980s, but it never really entirely died out. Like it's just the paranoid persecution complex of evangelical Christians and conservatives, is the feeling that they're out of sync, that people laugh at them, or, that they're not, they feel like they should be in control and they're not.
So Johnny, Calvinist grandpa that we know on YouTube, Christian book guy who's kind of funny.
Yeah.
He's talked about like, he doesn't let his kids celebrate Halloween. You don't play with devils and demons. You don't make light of it and all this stuff. Like it's very prevalent.
Oh yeah. Yeah, no, it's just like it reached the height of its popularity and reached the mainstream in the 1980s, but it never really died out. And it's just moved on. I mean, a lot of the same kind of thinking from the 80s has sort of mutated into like QAnon and conspiracy theories like that. Like it's just this feeling that there's always this organized group of malevolent people working against you. This, like, the whole thing is they feel like demons are constantly attacking them. Spiritual warfare. I mean, it's God, it's a depressing way to view the world, I think. But anyway.
Now, I will allow you to return to our musical topic.
So Vacation Bible School has written some really good like liner notes for these albums, and he's produced 5. I think the first one was in 2019. So he said he grew up as an evangelical, but he grew distant from that. He's no longer evangelical, but he's still a Christian. And so he has a lot of conflicted and mixed feelings about his faith and his life and the way he grew up, which is understandable. Like there are these mutually exclusive things, in mainstream pop culture. Halloween is the party time. It's the kids get to go trick or treating. There's costume parties. You get to dress up as someone else. You get to put up all these scary, fun things. You get to watch scary movies. It's a holiday, it's a harvest fall holiday. That's just kind of fun and harmless. And then, of course, the capitalist, consumerist, spin, got to buy costumes, got to get, treats for the kids, got to eat all those delicious candies you get as kids. And then on the other hand, you have evangelicals, which is like, we can't celebrate. This is not Halloween. This is the fall festival. This is, we're going to
harvest.
Yeah, it's the harvest time. The Lord provides. And these albums are sort of like a meditation on these conflicting impulses. And it's really interesting.
Yeah. And it's been a common theme in Vacation Bible School's music that, comfort anxiety, I guess, around being a Christian in a consumerist society. Because we've done 2 albums previously. We did Christmas Time at North Hill Malls and A Blessed Life, which is the Chick-fil-A gospel album. And both of those are also around purported Christian values around a season and around consumerism in general, respectively, and how to reconcile that with how we engage with it and how we're taught that we're supposed to engage with it, the disparity there. So thematically, all these make sense. I think it's fun. There's the 5 of them. The Bandcamp dates are 2019, but I don't know if they actually ever got published anywhere beforehand. I couldn't find them like earlier than that on YouTube or anything, because some of these do have YouTube versions, like visual albums.
I know one is explicitly labeled like as a re-upload because of content ID issues, which
right. Yeah, so it gets hard to tell, right? To do some of this archaeology around vaporwave where stuff gets moved around and re-uploaded or anything. But it's fun because across the 5 of them, they have like a little narrative too going on in the liner notes. I agree, he writes really good liner notes, but the first one's Fall Festival and the Satanic Panic, which has what you described about conflicting faith and views. And then the second one's Revenge of the Satanic Panic, where they once again come and ruin your fall festival. And then Satanic Panic 3 is like, they've returned to ruin your fall festival again.
Oh, 3 is I love that because it's
the Hell House.
Yeah. Like, Hell houses are Christian haunted houses, which are all like, imagine a haunted house, but the scripting and the story is written by pastors. And so it's about the evils of abortion and, disobeying your parents and how you're going to go to hell for that. And what does hell look like? Well, our cheap, spirit Halloween costume effects are going to show you how bad hell is.
And then, the 4th one is themed around possession. It has a little paragraph plot about, going out to the pumpkin patch on Halloween with your church group. And the satanic peoples are there. And then the 5th one is a lost radio recording it's advertised as.
Yeah. I think he narrated I'm guessing he narrated the little radio segments, segues.
Yeah.
It's a nice little album.
Yep.
Yeah, I think... So what I was expecting when listening to these, that it would be kind of like spooky vaporwave. And it is vaporwave. It's like, especially the earlier albums are very, quote unquote, classic vaporwave production. Plunderphonics, pitch shifting, and sampling. Like, again, like there's an entire media industry for Christians, conservative Christians. And it's all these paranoid lectures and sermons from extremists talking about how this or that is going to take you to hell. But there's also commercials and like TV special holiday music. And so I was expecting something very spooky, a lot of horror movie soundtracks. So there is some of that, but like a lot of it's very kind of mellow and introspective and, conflicting. Like I almost was thinking like a suburban caretaker at moments because of how lost and conflicted and ambiguous it is.
Yeah, exactly. I think I'm largely in the same boat where I was expecting just really much more of that classic vaporwave, because that's, for example, what, at least in my memory, like A Better Life was, where it was it was a vaporwave album about faith, kind of making fun of Chick-fil-A, but just with its own sample base of like church and gospel music as what's your sample for your vaporwave. And this is much more varied. Like you said, there's more of, I don't know, like broken transmission signal wavy type stuff of like little broadcasts these types of tapes we've been talking about coming in and out. A little bit more of a narrative. Also, because they were produced over several years, there's like a real improvement and drift in style too, from like the first one, which is like the most classic vaporwave. And then it gets into like more mall softy kind of stuff. And
the second album is very, very mall soft in places.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And
kind of by the time you get to the end of it, you're into like more satanic rock, and then, more like lo-fi. There's like some vapor trap. Like it's interesting. There's like a really clear evolution of influence and style while still sticking to the same central theme.
Yeah, I really like the change in styles, and like 5 doing a lo-fi hip hop. Like I really like that. I really like that, VBS is expanding his testing, his style and his skill against those things.
Yep.
But again, there are horror elements, like the end of the second one, Revenge of Satanic Panic. It has this like chorus of demented voices. Like it's very good, very creepy. And I think the third one, he snuck in the Suspiria theme in there. Like I think he slowed it down. It's like, hell yeah. Like an Argento Hell House would be terrifying. Oh my God. I would convert to Christianity if Argento.
So much red.
Yeah. So much red.
Yeah. The Suspiria theme in there is nice. I feel like I should have taken more detailed notes, but that is another common sample base you hear through is like quotes from movies, other movie themes. There's a few others I'm blanking on at the moment.
Charlie Brown, I know at one point.
The Charlie Brown pumpkin patch stuff comes up a lot. Yeah. There's another horror movie, but it's nice because it's not like The Exorcist or something, you know, like it's tapping into more probably childhood memory and media or more influential.
In the fourth one, I think there's some rock and roll with backmasking, which was another conspiracy theory of Christians that like, if you play this record backwards, it's a prayer to Satan and it'll corrupt your soul, which became a whole subgenre of fucking horror movies too, which I love.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that goes all the way back to like the Beatles having like secret messages.
Oh yeah, you're right. Yeah. It does predate the 80s. Yeah. By quite a bit.
But yeah, just in general. And yeah, that's a common Satanic Panic theme. You know, last week we watched a couple in the 80s. They made a lot of heavy metal Halloween movies like Trick or Treat and Black Roses and Haunted Ween and Hack-a-Lantern and stuff. That's in Trick or Treat. That's how he communicates with the rock god who's deceased. They're like his vinyl backwards is how the kid communicates. So it's like, that's like a plot element. So it's very common in the Satanic Panic media.
Oh yeah. And, you know, as we mentioned, the YouTube channel, there are visual versions of each album, which is an interesting montage compilation of commercials, bits from TV, and then sermons, you know, because like I said, there are all these VHS tapes that were made for churches to show. And it's an interesting sort of like peek into the zeitgeist of the 80s, you know, of this period, the height of the Satanic Panic. And like in the fifth one, it's more like, you know, his video production techniques are improving too. Like he's like, the first one is just like pretty straightforward, but like by the fifth one, he's doing a lot of like effects and like flipping and mirroring things of like these walkthroughs of like now, like a big thing is to decorate your lawn with a bunch of spooky things and like, you know, giant
get your big skeleton,
12-foot skeletons. Yeah. The visuals for the fifth album have a lot of that kind of stuff. Walk through suburban neighborhoods, which match the theme pretty well. And, you know, this is not like something you would put on for like a Halloween party. Like it's the album concept seems like it would be, but like, don't do that. Like it's not really driving music as much either, but it's very, you know, I think this is about VBS's complicated feelings about the holiday, you know?
Yeah.
He was told it was evil, but it's not really evil. It's just a holiday. And it's hard to reconcile those, you know, what you're told as a child versus what you can see as an adult. And also the fucking consumerism just, oh God, that ruins all holidays.
Yeah. And VBS is such an interesting guy. You know, two of these albums I think are pretty important to me because when we did Christmas time at North Hills Mall for Vaporwave, it was like one of our first Vaporwave Christmas episodes. Yeah, I sort of went back and listened to it. And, you know, Sunday School was also a fairly popular album. But like Revenge of the Satanic Panic at the time was the one that really stood out to me listening to his backlog at the time. Just because of these like mall-soft elements, like you said, this laid back transitioning into like incredible distortion. Just this whole package was influential on like rethinking Vaporwave. And then I think when we talked about Blessed Life, I made a bunch of claims about VBS's philosophy that I think were right because he reached out, I was like, yeah, I'd love to talk and like do an interview or something. But never got back to him because we don't really do like artist interviews. It's just not what we do. Not for any reason. I don't know. Not what we do. And then now I think about it, Satanic Panic 5 is like the last album released on his Bandcamp. And that was a couple years ago. So I hope he's doing okay.
Yeah.
Hope he's just maybe too busy to make music. Cause also each one of these got a little shorter. So, you know, maybe he got more busy with real life.
I mean, it's a lot of work to make an album and especially with a visual to go along with it too.
Yeah. Especially like a real like project like this. You know?
Yeah.
Maybe you don't really know what you want to do for the next album.
Yeah.
But, you know, the second one is the one I would check out if you were only to pick one of these 5. Although I would probably list all of them. It is the season.
Yeah.
For a little contemplative spooky music. I don't know. What do you want to call it? But yeah, I hope, I'd like to see him release more stuff, but I get it if he's busy, and I hope he's doing well.
Yeah. I mean, it's the perfect music to walk through a suburban neighborhood and look at all the spooky decorations out there, or, pre-trick-or-treating music. So, yeah. And again, if you are the kind of person who grew up around this stuff or had, some feelings about Halloween, it's a personal thing for you. I think this is perfect music for that. And VBS is taking vaporwave in a different direction than, sort of a very unique path. There are a couple other artists that produce in this area, but he's just sort of in a league of his own. And I'm here for it, and I really appreciate the work.
Yeah. Cause if you look at, Churchwave, there's a few other people that have themselves tagged in there.
Yeah.
Your Discovery is an artist I know who's tagged in the album is Churchwave. That's interesting. I'd check that out. But yeah, I don't know. I haven't listened to all these albums, so I'm not going to generalize about them. But, I always say that stuff sticks out in this field, especially in like Plunderphonics when it's personal. And, I think that connection to the dissociation or the dissonance between like living in America and being brought up as a Christian in America really comes through very well in all his albums.
Well, I mean, the thing is, this Christian media industry is absolutely huge. And unless you're immersed in it, it's totally invisible to you. And I think, and a lot of this stuff is made in America, but then exported to other churches and other communities abroad. So it's another, cultural imperialism of these evangelicals trying to convert everybody to their way of thinking. I'm looking at I just looked at the Churchwave tag of the number one album right now is Castle of Darkness, which is put out by an Australian artist. So, or the label's Australian. So I don't know if actually the artist is, but yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, your partner's Australian. Is there a big...
There are definitely mega churches and Adelaide's the city of churches. There's a lot of Catholics and Anglicans and there's a big evangelical presence in there. So it's definitely spread. Yeah.
The mega church is the other thing that might help somebody who has not experienced this to get some context. Because some of the, what was it? There's the man's conference or whatever a couple months ago at some mega church.
Oh yeah. Actually here in Springfield.
Where there was a demolition derby. It was in Springfield. Yeah.
Yeah.
It was like a demolition derby for Jesus, basically.
Yeah. They,
so stupid.
Yeah. So the way churches, they get all these donations, but they can't keep
tithing.
Yeah. And for certain churches, you actually have to submit your tax records in order to get in, so they know how much to charge you for tithing, and they won't let you in if you don't tithe enough. But they have to spend a certain amount of money. They can't, so they waste it on these gaudy things, including bringing in monsters.
Is it part of keeping like a tax status, or they?
Yeah. Well, it's just I don't remember the exact rules, but they can't just save it, so they have to spend it, and so a lot of it gets wasted on things like renting a tank and having it drive over cars. Well,
not an exaggeration.
No, quite literally. So they're a parody of themselves at this point, and they don't care. They just see it as a flex of their own power.
Yeah.
It's absolutely wild. And I would encourage people just to get more familiar with this if it's totally alien to you, because it's fascinating. And, this is the time to get scared. Boy, this could scare you if you're unfamiliar with how they work and how they think, because they're coming for you. They have plans for everyone, for sure. But yeah, the Satanic Panic series is really good. And yeah, again, it just gets into these conflicted feelings, and
it's the best type of vaporwave.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, there's the comfort of childhood memories and trick-or-treating and fun things, and then anxiety over this incredibly paranoid and influential organization that wants to control all aspects of society. So don't worry about it, or maybe worry a little bit about it.
And worry a little bit.
And there is a distinct correlation, he says, with these human sacrifices and the high number of missing persons. This is because some satanic groups dispose of their victim by dismembering the body and cremating the remains, eliminating any possibilities for identification. Members of satanic and occult groups come from all walks of life. Many are highly intelligent individuals. Michael A. Aquino, senior initiate and founder of the Temple of Set in San Francisco, is also a lieutenant colonel in the U.S. Army Reserve. He's received a top secret...
Thanks so much for listening to this episode. We had a lot of fun listening to this music and tapping into our own childhood memories of trick-or-treating and Halloween and thoughts of that. At least I assume I did. I don't know if you did. And but our next episode, we'll be talking about some new music for October, and that will be a lot of fun. And of course, we do have a Patreon, patreon.com/nightclerkradio. We've been talking about synth pioneers like Tangerine Dream lately. It's quite fun. And we have a very good community there where we have a whole channel for horror stuff, posting trailers and talking about new movies and other things coming up that are spooky. And we are on Twitter, Facebook, and Blue Sky now. We have a website, nightclerkradio.com. Tell your friends, tell your enemies. Please rate and review us on your podcasting app of choice. And if you have any questions or want to alert us to any other Satanic Panic media that you find interesting, please let us know. Message us or leave a comment on the YouTube episode. And we'll talk to you later.
Bye.
Bye.